Hi, I'm Andy. This is Project Car Haven, and this is obviously not a car. Recently, I acquired my motorcycle license and bought myself a V-Star 250, which I've made an episode on. This is not a V-Star 250. Because I got my license, my wife wanted her license, so then she went online and bought herself a Kawasaki ZZR. This is not a Kawasaki ZZR. We're still waiting for that to be delivered. But what she really wanted was a Royal Enfield. And what we have here is a Royal Enfield Meteor 350 Fireball. That's a mouthful. This bike came up on Marketplace and had to buy it because it was really cheap. And there's a few indicators as to why it was so cheap. You can see this. The mirrors here are zip tied on. And the reason for that is someone was trying to hide this bike's identity because it's stolen. The original legal owner had it for 2 weeks before it was taken. She's never actually ridden this bike herself. She's only been a passenger. It'd been missing for about 14, 15 months. And the police located it and then obviously returned it to her. She's well past it and doesn't want the bike anymore, put it up for sale, and got bombarded by the usual people that troll Facebook Marketplace offering, I don't know, $100, $200. It was only listed for $800, and that's what we bought it for. Well, there are numerous issues with the bike. Obviously, I pointed out the mirrors are held on by zip ties, ignition drilled out, the gauge is missing its face, the fuel tank's been poorly repainted, there's overspray on everything, there's no rear indicators, there's overspray on the tail light, there's overspray on the headlight, there's overspray on the engine. These fins should be nice and chrome or polished like the other side, and the back seat is a marvel of engineering. I mean, really, this is, I don't have words.
Gentlemen, which brings me to my next point. Don't smoke crack.
So there's plenty to fix cosmetically, but before all of that, I need to find out whether this will actually run. We bought it without starting it up. I just pushed it up onto the trailer. I've got no idea whether this is actually in good condition or whether it's just going to be flip as is or sell for parts at this point. So before trying to address any of the cosmetics, I think what I want to do is see if I can get this thing to actually at least turn over. So first things first, I'm going to check to make sure there's actually oil in it. Now, checking the oil level, there's a little window between these two marks here. Yes, there is oil in it. Oil level's okay. That is very black and will need changing. I guess I'll just do what the thieves did and use a screwdriver. It turns. The gauge lit up. Got an ABS light. There's no neutral indicator. And there's no LCD, so we don't know how many Ks it's done. That lens is missing. Okay, I heard the fuel pump prime. Now, I'll try and see if I can get it just to turn over. It shouldn't start with the kickstand down. It should have a clutch safety, so... Ugh. Alright, we got a dead battery, but it's trying to do something. Well, thankfully the lock for the side panel's also been destroyed, so it won't be too difficult to get into the fuses and the battery. Well, the cables are loose. Alright, so the safety for the stand stopped it from starting. I just wanted to hear it turn over. It doesn't sound like there's any scraping or any issues there, so oil circulating. Kick the stand up and see if we've actually got a runner. This is going to determine whether this thing gets fixed or parted out. Here we go. Yes! Horn works. Went into gear okay. Let's test the clutch. It moves. All right. I guess what I'll do next is get the battery out and get that on charge, see if we can revive it and start doing cosmetic things. But first, this thing has to go. I'll start by just trying to get all this tape off. Like, you really want that? I'm sure that rear fender is absolutely stuffed because of this effort. We'll call it an effort, shall we? Wow, just, yeah, oh my God. Well, got to order a new rear seat. Mind the cables. I'll try and clean up this. Of course, we're missing a seat bolt. That's fine. I've got one there. I'll just match up with that, get another one. So now I'm just going to get the bracket off the battery, get that out and get it on charge, and I'll get back to work on this tomorrow. Those terminals are loose. Oh, there's no captive nut for that. That little strap was to hold in the toolkit that's not there. What is this? Oh my God. Okay, yep.
The next day.
All right, so next day, the battery's back in. The terminals are no longer loose because I've sorted out that issue. I think what I need to do is focus on removing overspray. So I'm going to use some all-purpose thinners on the metal surfaces and then maybe some wax and grease remover on plastics like the clutch reservoir, indicator lenses. But first, I'm going to get these mirrors out of the way and remount the USB port just so it's tidier. Yep, that belongs over here. Well, nice little discovery about the mirrors. They're not actually for this bike. They're the completely wrong size, which is probably why they were zip tied on. Another thing to add to the shopping list. In the meantime, I'm just going to get on with removing overspray from stuff. So that there was hard work because that was intentionally sprayed, not overspray. But I did get the paint off and now both sides of the head of the engine match onto the other stuff. These lenses are plastic, this is glass. You won't be able to see it on film too well, but there is overspray on that, so I'm going to get this cleaned. This bezel should be chrome. That's been intentionally painted, so this is going to take a while. Well, I might just take this apart so I can get this bezel off, take the indicator lenses off. That'll give me access to the bolts for the gauge, so I can take that off as well, seeing as it's broken. And then maybe move on to this guard as well, I guess. So they've done a bit of damage to these lenses and overspray all here, so They'll need some work and polishing as well. Now with these indicator lenses, I think I'm going to have to use the thinners. It's going to wreck that plastic, but I need to get this paint off. I'll then need to sand them and polish them. So this has been wet sanded, and this one hasn't been touched yet. I think someone must have done something to these lenses beforehand. So I'm going to go away and wet sand this one, polish them, and then I'll be back to show you the difference.
Later.
So I used some Meguiar's Scratch X 2.0. It's made a bit of a difference. They're not perfect, but you know, it's better than it was. I also cleaned this front guard while the camera was off. Got all the overspray off of that. It looks a lot better. The side pods and fuel tank next. Unfortunately, they were spray painted on purpose, so they're going to be hard work. Oh, right, well, unfortunately, after cleaning up this side pod here, the thieves have done a lot of damage, so I've got no choice except to sand this back and repaint it. I've cleaned off a couple of spots on the tank, and I can see that the finish underneath has been damaged, so I won't be able to save it. It's wrecked, and so the best thing for this is probably just to sand it instead of trying to clean it up as well. So yeah, there's a hard lip here I'll need to sand back. I can separate this from the rest of the frame. Just some Torx bolts on the back. Take this out and sand it down. Well, I was going to try and feather out the edges of that damage, but I couldn't get it level. Whoever stole the bike and did that really did a number on these panels, so I had to sand back the whole thing just to get a smooth surface. So now I'll just clean these up with some wax and grease remover, let that flash off, and they should be ready for a bit of paint. Alright, while I wait for the paint to dry on those side pod panels, I'll remove the seat and start working on this fuel tank. I jumped ahead a little bit and removed the fuel tank to make it a bit easier to clean up and paint. It's held on by one bolt at the rear. It's got a couple of sort of clips that go around here. It's a matter of undoing that, lifting the back, pulling the tank back, disconnecting the fuel line. These two vent lines were already disconnected, so good job on the thieves for, you know, putting stuff back together after they did a bad paint job. So I'll sort all of that out. Now that the tank's off, I've emptied the fuel out, then get to work on sanding that and repainting that. Also, this was all scratched up and had a bit of rust, so I've sanded that back, put a bit of paint on there to protect it and stop any further rust from occurring. Well, with this side panel off, I can see there's another issue. Looks like a nut here has come adrift from the throttle cable, so that's sort of able to move around. We don't want that. So all I need to do is put this nut back on and tighten it up, make sure the throttle is adjusted correctly, and we're good to go. All right, so I decided to see how much of the paint I could get off by using a rag and some thinners, and it has revealed a whole bunch of damage. I don't know why the thieves decided they needed to do this. It's affected the surface of the tank itself. I need to get all of this off, sand these down so everything's more level before I then apply some primer and then paint it. This is... Why didn't they just paint over it as it was? Why did they have to do this? Well, I wasn't intending on taking it back to bare metal, but it was too damaged. I didn't have a choice, so I guess now I'll put some primer on and then the paint.
tomorrow.
So I carried on into night time, ended up getting the tank painted in the colour it needs to be, and that's all done and dry. The tank securing bolt's now been replaced with one that actually fits, not some odd screw. Extra bolt for the seat, that's now secured. So I've only got a couple of tasks left that I can really get out of the way, which is clean and lubricate the chain and do an oil change. So I've got some of this Penrite chain cleaner. It's just a matter of spraying it onto the chain, let it soak in, give it a wipe, possibly a scrub. Left that to dry for about 10 minutes. Now I'm going to apply some Motul C5 chain lube. Now I was going to do the oil change, except the oil filter that I have on hand isn't the correct one for this bike. I can't find a cross-reference to find the correct one, so I have to wait for the one that I've ordered online to arrive. Got some new decals made up, the Meteor 350 and the Royal Enfield for the tank. The tank needs 2K clear on it to protect it from fuel spills, so that needs to wait. Also need to wait for all the other parts to arrive that have been ordered, so I guess I'm stuck at the moment. So that's the end of this episode. I guess all that's left to say is thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one when we get this bike finished off and hopefully back on the road.